Greetings, Jelly Beans, and welcome back to this week's Monday Madness. This week it is just my voice. Pretend it's a podcast or something, you'll love it. Mostly because I am travelling for work. It is Halloween season and I am busy, incredibly busy. It is a wonder I have found time to record this video at all. So enjoy this AI created artwork while I talk to you about Halloween on the Neverland. Now, this video about Halloween on the Neverland is going to be mostly speculation. I am going to enjoy adding some flourishes and ideas to various things, and I am going to steal from the canon as well to harness my ideas just a little bit, but predominantly it is me making things up. But hey, I invent things quite a lot on this channel, particularly stories and stuff, and seeing as I know the Neverland and the story of Peter Pan quite well, I think I can do some pretty good guessing, so here we go. I'm not going to delve too deeply into why Halloween might be happening on the Neverland. Let's just say that a lot of the Lost Boys who come and go over time will remember it from their home lives back in the real world. And therefore, the reason for Halloween, why it exists in the first place, that's pretty irrelevant. Basically, the Lost Boys wanted it, and so it arrives. Peter, of course, does not remember it, has no idea what it is, but it is an idea for an adventure, and therefore he likes it. One of the funny things to note about the Neverland is that the seasons are always changing, and they're different on different parts of the island. As J.M. Barrie describes in the play of Peter Pan, it is summer on the trees and on the lagoon, but winter on the river, which is not remarkable on Peter's Island, where all the 4 seasons may pass while you are filling a jug at the well. And of course we have to take this into account when thinking of Halloween, because for most of the Lost Boys remembering it, they will also remember that it happens in the depths of autumn. I did toy with the idea that perhaps the entire Neverland, just for one day, every single time they have Halloween, the entire island would become an autumnal forest. However, I think it'd be much more fun to have them have to chase the adventures with the seasons. Therefore, everything Halloweeny is actually happening wherever autumn happens to be falling. However, I do think that as a general vibe, the island itself would get a lot darker and a lot more sinister. And anyone who's watched my Dark Peter Pan Facts videos will know it's fairly sinister to begin with, but bear with me here. I think that for one whole day and one whole night, the sun itself will disappear behind clouds, leaving the island shrouded in dark fog, cloud, and mist. There'll be dark, creeping shadows of various shapes and sizes coming out of the undergrowth, and Halloween on the Neverland will always occur at the turn of the moon, so there is no lights in the sky beyond the clouds and the stars. Now, because time on the Neverland runs very differently to time in the real world, Halloween on the Neverland will not be on the same day as it would be back on the mainland. I think that it could happen almost sporadically. To us, it might be a couple of weeks apart, then a year, then 2 years, then a few months. But to those on the Neverland, Halloween will come precisely when they most wish it to come. Let's explore the island and set the scene a little more. At the turn of the moon, that is the most dangerous time for any mortal to visit the Mermaid's Lagoon. And therefore, I say that Halloween will always occur on the Neverland at the turn of the moon. And I want to harness that and incorporate that into the rest of the island as well. It's not just dangerous to approach the Mermaid's Lagoon anymore, it's now dangerous to be anywhere on the island. Predominantly in those parts covered by the season of autumn. The adventures to be found there in the season of autumn are the most deadly and dangerous the island has ever known, and also the most creepy, spooky and unearthly and eerie. Let's remain by the side of the Mermaid's Lagoon for just a moment while we begin to paint more of this picture. The pitch black water reflecting the pitch black sky is barely making a ripple. And echoing all across the water, you can hear a cacophony of strange, eerie noises. Some are the echoing cries of the mermaids calling for the moon to come back. And some are the dreadful wails and pleading cries of the sailors left to drown on Maruna's Rock, whose ghosts now rise to haunt the lagoon, just for one Halloween day. As you look out further across the dark water, you can see shapes rising from the depths. These are the wrecks of the many ships that have washed ashore on the Neverland, now rising for one whole Halloween night to sit hauntingly in the waters they once used to tread. There are many other ghosts on the Neverland too. As we move inland to scan the island itself, you can see the ghosts of lost boys, pirates, beasts, and many others. Most of the pirates were slain in battle, and their ghostly figures are still speckled with deep red blood. Others come trudging out of the waters where they were made to walk the plank or else flung overboard. Some of the lost boys met a similar fate, and still others were led into dark, shadowy corners of the island where they met a swift end at the edge of Peter's blade. Those particular ghosts look perhaps the most troubled, even at peace. They, of course, were not allowed to grow up. This was against the rules, and yet they started to do so anyway, and thus had to be swiftly dispatched. The saddest of the ghosts to witness on the Neverland at Halloween time are those tiny shimmering lights that show the fairies. These flickering remains are the ghosts of the fairies who dropped down dead as soon as a child proclaimed that they no longer believed. Perhaps Tinkerbell is among them somewhere. Of course, there are happier things that come when Halloween arrives on the Neverland. Most of these come from the recollection of the lost boys too, though dribs and drabs may have been added over the years by the pirates and various other inhabitants too. At the very end of the day and night, when the sun is about to rise into the sky again, there is a great big feast, a giant meal held by all on the Neverlands, and it can be both make-believe and real, whichever happens at the time. Leading up to this meal, there are some sweet treats that the lost boys favour most. These are toffee apples, or the nearest equivalent on the Neverland. How you make them is quite simple. You pluck some of the mammy apples already growing on the trees, and you search for the tree with the sweetest sap on the island, dunking the apples into it, and then eating them as you parade around looking for your next adventure. We already know that pumpkins grow on the Neverland. This is shown in the description in the play of the Lost Boys' Home Under the Ground. But when Halloween arrives on the Neverland, pumpkins begin to sprout up almost everywhere. Many fairies take to using them as temporary houses or gathering spots, and the rest of the inhabitants like to illuminate them with special lights and candles. They use them to mark the way of various trails, and the larger ones get carved into funny expressions. When the Lost Boys are not adventuring, they sit down with many other inhabitants of the island and have pumpkin carving competitions, the winner being the one who can create the strangest visage out of their pumpkin. What they win, of course, is yet more toffee apples, and the right to choose which adventure they go on next. The fairies too know how to celebrate Halloween with style. They throw a great party, and of course the fairies are already very fond of parties, but this one is truly magnificent, topped only by fairy weddings or birthday celebrations. Every fairy on the Neverland attends, and even invite those from further afield to come to the island, specially for this party. They dance, they twirl, they play glorious music, and sometimes if Peter is around, he will play for them on his panpipes as well. I don't know whether you've ever seen a great gathering of fairies before. If you have not, let me describe it to you. It is quite exactly like staring directly into the sun itself. A dazzling cacophony of different coloured lights, all dancing and twirling together, and thus the fairy party is not hard to discover when Halloween approaches on the Neverland. But of course, while its location may be perfectly easy to discover, none but the fairy folk are invited, so you best turn your back and find another adventure for yourself. And then of course there's the trick or treating. While many lost boys over the years recollected this notion of trick-or-treating, none could quite remember exactly what it was. And so the tradition, while carrying on in the many years on the Neverland, it has now evolved and taken on a rather strange shape. The lost boys will split into two groups, one travelling round the island clockwise and the other anti-clockwise. One group will continuously at points shout the word trick, and the other group will shout the word treat. If it is the treat group who manage to locate the others first on the island, then they will present them with wonderful gifts, sweet treats to eat, pretty things to wear, and other things like that. However, if it is the trick group who locate the others first, then they will launch upon them and attack, trying to stuff them into sacks, attacking them with swords and branches, all the while screaming trick, trick, trick. It is all, of course, tremendous fun, and once everything is over, the Lost Boys gather together again as one collective, eating more toffee apples and perusing the island, chasing more adventures. And then, of course, every single inhabitant on the Neverland comes together for the great Halloween feast. And every last one of them tries desperately to remain awake so that they can watch as the last ebbs of darkness steal from the sky and the sun breaks through the clouds once more, turning the skies blue and shiny. That is going to be it for this week's Monday Madness. I hope you guys enjoyed this mini tour around the Neverland at my imaginary Halloween time. How would you like to celebrate Halloween on the Neverland? What traditions would you impose? And hey, what do you do for actual Halloween, if you do anything at all? Let me know in the comments below. I'll try to read them all as usual. Have a wonderful week, everybody. I hope your Halloween is not quite as chaotic as mine. I love you all. Farewell.